Tina White and Andy Hopkins are a couple on their way to a week of rest, relaxation, and reconnection. They plan to spend a week enjoying the tropics aboard a luxury cruise sailing from Fort Lauderdale, Florida to the Cayman Islands. Tina and Andy are hoping to rekindle and repair their relationship by getting away from it all.
However, if you're already having trouble in the relationship and you're going through a bit of a rocky patch, it might not be the best idea.
Things seem to have started off really well. They were having a great time. Everything was going as you would expect it to be.
But things take a dark turn when Tina and Andy have a heated argument.
Other passengers reported that Tina and Andy were bickering.
Cruise ships provide their own kind of stress. It's a very confined space. You don't really have a lot of room to escape each other.
Old arguments flare up, and a relationship in need of a spark quickly fizzles out. Now, Andy and Tina's relaxing vacation takes a mysterious turn when she goes missing. What has happened to Tina White? Tina White and Andy Hopkins live in Bonita Springs, Florida. The two have been in an on-again, off-again relationship for quite some time. Lately, however, it's been more off again than on again. But Tina and Andy love and care about each other. They're determined to get past the rocky patches in their relationship and make things work. However, sometimes old habits are hard to break, and the arguments just keep getting worse and worse. So, in an effort to get things back on track, Tina and Andy come up with a plan to go on a holiday. Leaving March 8, 2008, the couple decide to get away from it all and go on a week-long cruise to the Cayman Islands. Tina's mother, Kathy, has come to see the couple off. Tina's family is happy for the couple. They love Andy and are happy the two are trying to make it work. The cruise departs from Fort Lauderdale, which is nearly a 2-hour drive from their home in Bonita Springs.
Planning an adventure like this can be a great bonding experience and a great way to build intimacy together. Just knowing that you're about to embark on something together like this that's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience can add new spark to your relationship.
Other passengers reported that Tina and Andy were excited and happy, just like everyone else, but they were bickering as they boarded the ship.
Sometimes the best thing a couple can do to reconnect is get away, take a vacation, go somewhere where the ordinary stresses of work and life aren't a factor. You can focus on each other. However, if you're already having trouble in the relationship and you're going through a bit of a rocky patch, it might not be the best idea. A cruise ship is a very confined space, and it doesn't give you a lot of room to get space from each other, to get away from each other when things are getting heated.
The couple are excited to finally be on their cruise, and Andy makes an effort to really show his love and care for Tina by ordering champagne.
It's the little things that make a difference in a relationship. Sometimes those little gestures that show that your partner is thinking of you or loving you can go a long way to healing a rift between you.
For the rest of the day, Tina and Andy soak up all the luxuries that the ship has to offer. Enjoying the food, drink, people, and impressive nightlife.
Things seemed to have started off really well. They were having a great time. They were meeting other people. They were enjoying the weather. Everything was going as you would expect it to be. But things aren't always the way they look.
But at some point that first evening, Tina and Andy get into an argument. Too much of a good thing can ruin the fun.
This is a really bad sign when couples are comfortable being this physical with each other, especially out in public. It suggests that this has happened before, that this is a reoccurring habit and not a one-time thing.
Tensions rise, and Tina decides to go back to their room. Andy follows Tina, and the couple's argument only intensifies as they head back to their suite.
Just like those little gestures can make a huge positive difference, when you're already having trouble, little insensitivities can make a huge negative difference. When you're already set in the pattern of fighting and arguing and you're sensitive towards each other, just the littlest thing can set a person off.
By the time they arrive at their suite, the couple are in a full-blown argument.
Not everyone is great with confrontation. Sometimes a person's response to an argument or fight is to walk away, just take some time, cool off, before re-engaging with your partner. However, sometimes that doesn't work. If the other person in the relationship isn't willing to give you that breathing space, give you that time, it can cause even more conflict.
But in trying to reignite their spark, Tina and Andy set their relationship ablaze. An out-of-control emotional fire that ends in tragedy. A tragedy that leads to more questions than answers. Tina White and Andy Hopkins are a couple looking to rekindle the spark in their relationship by going on a week-long cruise to the Cayman Islands. Though their cruise has just started, the couple are trying their best to make the most of their tropical getaway, basking in the warm sun and dancing But the calm ocean breeze can't tame their tempers, and tragedy strikes. What has happened? What could have made the unthinkable a reality? In the early morning of March 9th, 2008, Andy Hopkins bursts from his room and frantically tells security that Tina has gone overboard. After hearing Andy's cries for help, a crew member sounds the alarm, and others jump into action. The captain orders his crew to begin their rescue protocol.
Cruise lines would typically be required to have procedures that deal with a situation if a passenger is reported to have gone overboard. So the quicker they can implement those procedures, the better the chance of survival for that passenger.
The captain also calls the Coast Guard, who rush to the area to begin assisting the search. Andy, now in full-on panic, is demanding more to be done by crew members. He is ushered off the main deck, where he can hopefully calm down and give more information to crew.
In a situation like this, the head and the heart are at war. Basically, you're freaking out, you're terrified, your loved one is missing, they may have gone overboard. But at the same time, cooler heads need to prevail. You need to be able to be calm enough to tell the crew exactly where you think your partner might have gone overboard so that they will have a chance of finding her.
Crews search for hours, and still no sign of Tina. At approximately 7:45 a.m., the captain makes a small announcement that a passenger has gone overboard, and the travel path of the cruise is going to be disrupted.
I think most passengers would understand that if somebody went overboard, the ship would have to divert from its itinerary for a short period of time. Anyone who's lost a loved one would want the cruise line to do absolutely everything possible to look for that person.
Tina White and Andy Hopkins are a couple getting away from it all on a week-long cruise to the beautiful Cayman Islands. Though they have had some rocky moments in their relationship, the couple's hoping their tropical getaway is just what they need for smoother sailing between them. Every effort is made not to fall into old patterns, but some old habits are hard to break.
This is a reoccurring habit and not a one-time thing.
And tensions can find a way to flare up if they aren't handled with care. What has happened on the balcony? Where is Tina White?
Searching for a passenger who's gone overboard during the day would be an arduous task as it is, but searching for someone who's gone overboard during the night would be exponentially more difficult. The sun coming up would offer greater visibility to the crew, but the fact is the person is much further away and the search area becomes that much greater.
Andy is growing increasingly upset. He feels not enough is being done to find Tina. He aggressively yells and even threatens staff. Security is called to help deal with the situation. Andy is escorted to the security office for questioning and to help him calm down.
When something like this happens, it's very traumatic, but we have to recognize that not everyone reacts the same to trauma. It's real dangerous to make judgments on people based on how they react when something bad happens. This is called demeanor evidence, and it's been a real problem in trials where innocent people have gone to jail simply based on the way they acted when something bad happened to them.
We follow almost the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, why, and how something has occurred. It's almost like building a puzzle. The first indication is that we actually want to work on a positive identification, or if not, who are we suspecting this individual to be who has passed away? How do we do that? Like, who first came on scene and found that individual? And that's when we start what we call is that timeline. Who first saw this person, or when was this last person seen? If they're in their home, or if they were in their suite on the boat, or if they were around an individual. So who found this person and how do you know them? How are you affiliated with that individual? And then we first go to say, do we have any medical history on this person? Or do we know how they were feeling in the last several days? How has that worked out? So the who and the what. What were they doing? What were they telling people? What were they saying? How were they acting? Where were they last again? And then why were they doing that? Why were they acting in this certain way? Were they intoxicated? Were they under the influence of drugs or alcohol? Were they not feeling well? Did they have a medical condition that was causing them to act in that sort of manner? And then from there, I always tell a family that's how we are going to help you find that your loved one has passed away. If they give that visual aspect of that we're building a puzzle.
At approximately 10:30 a.m., the captain makes another announcement. The ship will be returning to Miami for technical reasons.
It would be standard procedure for someone from the ship's crew to contact the local authorities in a situation like this. It would be really difficult for a person to accidentally trip up and over a 4-foot railing, so there are questions that need to be answered here. Did this person jump, or did they have help?
The ship docks at the port of Miami, and investigators board. Investigators begin their questioning of fellow passengers and crew members.
Investigators would definitely want to speak to the ship's captain. They'd want to determine where roughly the ship's position was when Tina went overboard. The local authorities would get as much information as they could from the captain, and then they would coordinate with the Coast Guard to continue the search. The search area is enormous, so the more information they can put together, the more likely they can narrow down the location where Tina went into the water.
The Coast Guard is continuing their exhaustive search for Tina and is coordinating their efforts with air support from a search and rescue helicopter. A much calmer Andy discusses the case further with investigators. Then, the investigators try to see if they can get a better idea of the events leading up to Tina going overboard.
Jim and Susan are in a really difficult position. Some of us may have been through this ourselves, where you see something that doesn't strike you as kosher, or you see something that really bothers you, a couple fighting, or maybe you hear yelling in the night, and you think that maybe you should do something. But then you decide, you know what, I'm gonna mind my own business. I don't want to be embarrassed if it turns out it's a false alarm. When something does happen, we feel so guilty that we didn't act in those moments.
Crew members led investigators into Tina and Andy's suite to look around.
Even though they'd only been on the cruise for a short time, plenty of people noticed that there was tension between Andy and Tina.
We know that the victim has been reported missing and presumed to have jumped over. When we go into a suite, and we know that by all accounts, the neighbors heard arguing well into 11 p.m. in the evening. As an investigator, I think I would like to be looking into the scene that was there an altercation between the two of them. Any evidence of sort of moved furniture, something tousled over, perhaps something thrown at each other within the suite that was easy to grab. Any indication that there might have been more of a physical altercation than just an argument. As an investigator, if there is a speculation that the incident occurred on the balcony, the individual was either thrown off or did that individual jump, we could perhaps use a forensic examination and investigation that would look towards more of fingerprints and where the footprints are in conjunction to the movement or the chaos that was ensuing.
What happened to Tina White? Did she jump, or was she pushed? Tina White and Andy Hopkins are a couple making a fresh start together. Having had some rough patches along the way in their relationship, the couple is trying to reconnect and strengthen their bond on a week-long cruise to the Cayman Islands. Even though they have only been on the cruise for a day, they're making good use of their time and all the ship has to offer. But all good things come to an end. And when Andy reports that Tina has gone overboard, it's a race against time to find out why. And more importantly, find Tina alive. Investigators interview fellow passengers to determine if they witnessed anything. They tell investigators that they saw Tina and Andy have a heated argument and then leave the dance club together.
It can be very difficult to perform a crime scene investigation when there is very little physical evidence and that the body is still missing. Therefore, to come to a conclusion can be extremely difficult.
On a cruise ship, you're never really alone. There's not really such thing as privacy. Even when you're in your own quarters, if your voices are raised, people can hear you. And in this case, plenty of people witnessed the fights between the couple. They were so involved in their arguments that they didn't even notice that they were being overheard.
A crew member tells of seeing the couple argue as they walk toward their suite.
Even though vacations can be a bonding experience for a couple, they can be a great chance to get away. Cruise ships provide their own kind of stress. You're meeting lots of new people, there's lots of distractions, there's lots of entertainment, things to do. People might differ on what they want to do every evening. Also, it's a very confined space. You don't really have a lot of room to escape each other. Even the biggest cruise ships feel like small towns.
Another passenger says he saw Tina and Andy argue a few times, since boarding the day before.
The investigators are becoming a little more suspicious because they keep hearing information about Andy and Tina arguing all the time.
Normally, people try to keep their cool even when they're starting to get angry if they're in public. They don't want to be embarrassed by a big public display of anger. However, sometimes you just lose yourself in the moment and you're so focused on what you're fighting about, you don't realize that you're actually making a scene.
As investigators work tirelessly on Tina's case, the search for her body continues. Investigators interviewed Jim and Susan again, and this time they admit to hearing the couple fight the night of Tina's disappearance. The wife claims that the yelling seemed to stop abruptly at 11:15 p.m., and then she and her husband went back to sleep.
Susan did something very, very smart here. She looked at the time as soon as the fighting stopped. This was really helpful for the investigators. If you are in this situation where you hear something going on and you're not sure whether or not you should contact authorities or, in this case, the crew, at least keep note of the time. That you never know when that could help solve a mystery.
This couple also tells investigators that though Tina and Andy seemed like nice people, they saw them argue numerous times since boarding the day before. Another guest tells investigators that at first she thought it was nothing, but then, after the events of the day, she thought she should say that last night, while in her room, she thought she saw something drop past her window. She didn't hear anything, but definitely saw something go past.
With so many people hearing them argue, the idea that it's something more sinister than just an accidental fall becomes more plausible. So at this point, we're really just speculating because there's no actual evidence of a crime. A person can't be charged on speculation alone.
A thorough investigation of the cabin suite was performed, and it seems that there was no evidence that indicated that there was an altercation between the two individuals. And we can explain the fact that when two individuals are actually staying and, as a fact, living within that suite before a crime scene investigation is performed, there may be fingerprints all over the suite, within the bathroom, the countertops, the railing outside on the cabin suite. So therefore, it'd be very difficult to determine if there was any altercations because there's already fingerprints everywhere.
On-again, off-again couple Tina White and Andy Hopkins are on a week-long cruise to the beautiful Cayman Islands. The couple are trying to put any differences aside so they can rebuild their relationship while soaking up paradise. But just hours later, the unthinkable happens. 39-year-old Tina White goes overboard. Now it's a race against time to find Tina and find out how and why this happened. the Coast Guard continues their exhaustive search for Tina White, covering 3,000 square miles.
The Coast Guard really is the ultimate authority in searching large open areas of water quickly and efficiently. But the reality is a person can only survive for so long in the water.
Investigators call Tina's mother and stepfather back in Bonita Springs to notify them of Tina's disappearance.
You never stop being a little girl to your mother. Even though Tina was a grown woman, her mom still worried about her all the time, worried about her going on this cruise, etc. But since she's gone missing, this is horrible news. This brings the worry to a whole new level. And her mother is devastated, wondering what could have become of her daughter.
Investigators interview a much more calm and cooperative Andy. He admits they had been arguing. He tells them that in the middle of a heated exchange on their balcony, Tina jumped overboard. Is an event such as that which Andy describes possible? Is Tina capable of, or willing to, take her own life? What circumstances would have led to this taking place? Would Tina really have done this of her own volition? Could the events of her life really have led to this tragic choice? Sadly, we may never know for sure.
In discussing Andy's interview, the investigators had some concerns because what he's telling them is a little different from what they had expected to hear. They have some doubts about what he's telling them.
Investigators go over the security footage from the night before and see glimpses of the fighting couple as they leave the nightclub and head back to their room.
Security footage can be really valuable, but it only tells you so much information. There's no camera in the suite, so there's no way of knowing what occurred once they closed the door behind them.
Tina's brother Toby tells investigators that Tina and Andy had a rocky relationship. Toby tells them that even though they fought and broke up a lot, he believes his sister really loved Andy and always went back to him.
The problem with toxic relationships is you don't always realize you're in one until it's too late. Things build up gradually, and there's usually so much hope, at least from one of the parties, that things will work out, that you cling to that hope and don't even realize when things are falling apart around you.
Toby also tells investigators that even though his sister loved Andy, he doesn't buy the story that she jumped. He tells them that Tina was afraid of heights and water, and that she would not have jumped or put herself at risk of falling overboard.
Clearly, Andy and Toby's stories conflict with one another.
Investigators question Andy on the info provided by Toby. Andy is concerned but stays true to his story. He states again that Tina jumped overboard while in the middle of their argument.
If someone's jumping and that's already a 4-foot something railing, you're gonna need to launch over your body with, you're gonna step on something and help yourself over.
Based on the investigation that's been completed to this point, conversations with passengers on the ship would indicate that Andy and Tina had been arguing all day. But in the absence of actual evidence, is that enough in itself to charge him with her murder?
If a body was to be located in the water and identified as the deceased, an autopsy would be performed to determine the cause and manner of death. If an individual would have jumped, an autopsy may show blunt force trauma and drowning. But if an individual had been strangled or dead prior to entering the water, an autopsy might indicate that this could be a homicide. Unfortunately, a body was never located.
With no evidence, investigators can't charge Andy Hopkins with the crime. After an exhaustive search spanning 3,000 square miles, the Coast Guard suspends their operations on March 10, 2008.
It's news no one wants to hear. Even though this is the worst outcome, when someone goes overboard on a cruise ship, the likelihood of finding them alive is slim.
Tina White is never found. Tina White has gone overboard on a tragic night aboard a luxury cruise sailing to the Cayman Islands. After an exhaustive search covering around 3,000 miles, Tina's body is never found. The main suspect and the last person to see her alive, her on and off again boyfriend, Andy Hopkins, claims that she jumped off their balcony during a heated argument. Without a body and no evidence found at the crime scene, investigators have no other choice than to let Andy walk free. The tragic end of Tina White remains a mystery. In late March 2008, the FBI open an investigation into Tina White's disappearance. But because her body is never found, they aren't able to come up with much more information. Tina's mother tells investigators that Andy called her and told her that he saw Tina jump overboard. With nothing other than Andy's account of what happened, her case is never declared a murder.
This is the worst kind of case for everybody who loved this woman. There's absolutely no closure. As much as they may think that Andy was involved, there's absolutely no proof and nothing that can be done. It's such a sad way to lose a family member or friend.
Did Tina jump, or was she pushed over the balcony? There are only two people who know for sure what happened that night. One has a story, and the other isn't around to tell hers.
Does Andy know more than he's told the authorities and Tina's family? Could Tina have simply jumped, as Andy has said? The sad truth is, we'll never know for sure what happened to Tina White. Tina White's family holds a memorial service for her on March 30th, 2008. She is 39 years old and leaves behind 3 children.